Hi, Year 11. So today we're looking at business management and change, and we've been looking a little bit about... So I was trying to get into my room. Can you hear them all? We've been looking a little bit at business management and change during class, and we were talking about that business that was in the UK. Very strange business, family business that's been operating for 100 years, and yet it just hasn't experienced much change at all during that time. You have the father and the mother who are just resistant to change, want to hang on to the old ways of doing stuff, absolutely petrified of technology. And you have the son, the upcoming generation, who quite rarely, I feel, in family businesses, wants to take over the business, wants his children's children to still be part of that hardware business, but is really trying hard to get some changes happening in the workplace. Simple changes like stock control and bringing in the FPOS machine, which he had to do secretly, and the parents just had to deal with the conflict once it was in. Okay, so management and change, very exciting topic, because change is something that we're all afraid of. They say that of all the stressful things in life, it's change that is the most stressful. So things like changing jobs, a divorce, or a lifestyle change. That's the greatest stresses that we in Australia are going to face in our lives. So one of the first things I wanted to show you is where this appears in our syllabus. Do you think it's going to let me do that? To look at the syllabus. Here it is. Now in our syllabus, which is that document that the Board of Studies brings out, it says to us what we need to study. And here again, see, it says we really need to look at management and change. We need to look at how a business responds to internal and external influences. Yesterday we spoke about some of those internal and external influences. The example for internal, now let me recall, was on the board. I can't remember exactly our example for internal. I certainly remember that externally we were talking about climate change, and then the government bringing in new laws which would ultimately increase the cost of our power. So this was an external change we have no control over. How are we going to deal with this change? Internally, I think, that's right, we used the canteen example, and we were saying that there's a possibility of bringing in the FPOS machine, and how would the canteen business deal with this change? Are we going to be fearful of new technology? Are we going to resist this change because in fact it will take much longer to process the transaction? So responses. And where do these changes come from? They come from within the business, management changes, technology changes, and externally, things that go on in the external business environment that we have no control over. A biggie is the global financial crisis, GFC, and throughout Year 12 we're going to be talking a little bit more specifically about the GFC and how the rest of the globe is coping financially, how their economies are going, and then ultimately the impact that that has on our businesses. Just this morning in the news, they were talking about oil refineries in Australia. A refinery is one of those businesses that imports crude oil and converts that crude oil into petrol. And in Australia we used to have over, I think they said 8 oil refineries, which is quite a lot. And now we're down to 4, and just today one of those has announced their closure. That's the one in Kurnell over near Botany Bay. It's been around for years and years refining oil, and now they're just going to convert that site. Instead of it being a refinery, they're just going to the receiving station for already refined oil. Now, where they're getting this from, it looks like it's going to be coming from Singapore, because places like Singapore have bigger and better refineries, and because they have such a big refinery operating there, they actually enjoy this thing called economies of scale, which we're going to look at in a minute, which means that they can produce it cheaper than Australia ever can. So there you go, there's an external change, improvements in technology in a place overseas such as Singapore. They're able to refine oil, crude oil, much cheaper, and this has impacted on Australian business that's been around for years. Just an example for you. Secondly, we're going to identify the need for change, business information systems, setting achievable goals, resistance to change, and management consultants. Okay, our business's responses to change. This means, how does a business respond to change? Now, there's a range of structural responses that are often implemented to accommodate change. Three that I want you guys to learn are: in response to change, a business might outsource. In response to change, a business will incorporate a flatter management structure. And in response to changes, they will adopt a strategic alliance or a network. Now, I also have a case study that I'd like you to do as extra work at home. It's on General Motors. Before I go on about these responses or structural responses to change, like how does a business set itself up to respond to changes in the external environment, I want to just show you this extra work. Okay, you have this, it's printed off. It's General Motors, which you guys know, they produce things like the Cadillac, Buick and Chevrolet, and they also produced a car called the Hummer, many. They were a booming business. But, as we scroll down here, eventually, just because they were so successful, they were actually slow to respond to change. One of some of the big changes that they were slow to respond to is the 1970s first oil shocks. So consumers were actually looking for something, cars that were not so big and did not guzzle up so much petrol. And GM just didn't respond to this. They weren't listening to the consumers. And so the consumers looked to other manufacturers who produced the smaller cars. And even these days, the electric car in the United States, it's not uncommon to see an electric car running along the roads. And the entrance of Japanese imports who actually did listen to the consumer and produced these smaller, more affordable businesses. So GM eventually had to file for bankruptcy. They just simply were slow to respond to these changes. They've only just recovered financially now. Oh, I've got the old version up here. Yours is a little bit more detailed than this. So I'd like you to do that for homework for me, please, at some other stage this next week or over the weekend. Okay, so some of these structural responses to change. The first is to outsource. So outsourcing is done in order to cut costs. The firm engages outside organisations or individuals to undertake specific activities that have traditionally been carried out within the business. Such activities include, of course, cleaning, financial management, catering, security, transport. So perhaps your business may find that you no longer have economic advantage. You can no longer compete with other businesses because you've got these burden these functions within your business that are becoming a burden. It's so expensive for you to be doing all of these things. So eventually what you do is you go and put a tender out there and you find a business that will do it for you for much cheaper than what you can. So in other words, for example, your accounting, that's what we mean by financial management. You can get your accounting done by an accounting firm. You can get your cleaning done by a cleaning firm. Outsourcing enables economies of scale to be achieved and removes the need for any on-costs such as training and leave entitlements. In other words, if you got an accountancy firm to do your financial business, their employees need to be paid their training and leave entitlements by the other firm. You do no longer actually have to pay for that because the people that are doing these functions are not an employee of your firm. So you save costs in that regard. It reduces job security and does reduce a firm's flexibility over its operations. And I just want to point out to you what this economies of scale is, because I did mention it in terms of the Kernel example. So remember, your response to the change is to restructure your business. And the first part of restructuring that I've just mentioned is that instead of your business doing absolutely every function, we know that the business has 4 functions: marketing, operations, finance and employment relations, that we're saying that they're going to outsource some of that. So perhaps the finance or perhaps the marketing side of business. So we're saying we can achieve economies of scale. So economies of scale are the cost advantages that an enterprise obtains due to expansion. There are factors that cause a producer's average cost per unit to fall as the scale of output is increased. So it simply means that as you it's a phenomenon that says as you produce more and more, here it is here, the most important part, the average cost per unit falls. So it's getting cheaper to produce the more you produce. And for those of you who love your economics, there's your diagram to demonstrate what I was talking about. So we produce quantity 1, and per unit it actually costs this amount here. You produce quantity 2, you're producing more, each unit is actually costing less. Because, and you can imagine why that's happening. The same machine is going to produce quantity Q and quantity Q2. So that the cost of that machine is being spread over this amount that's being produced, and the cost of that machine is being spread over this amount that's need to produce. So there's more units for the average cost to be spread over. So overall the average cost has decreased. Economies of scale, important concept. Cutting costs increases our profits. So in response to change you might outsource, and this ultimately leads to cutting costs, which will increase our profits. Another structural change in response to Another structural response in response to change is a flat management structure. When you adopt a flatter structure, it eliminates middle management. So immediately we've reduced our costs for these middle management people. It requires more educated and trained staff. Look at all these advantages just by eliminating some levels in your business structure. So the advantages are wage costs. But this kind of change may cause many people to lose their jobs because they're getting in more specifically trained staff. Now think about it, this could actually cause resistance to this change in your business. So you have an external change, and you respond by having a structural change, but this structural change could actually create resistance amongst your staff. The final structural change that appears in your syllabus is a strategic alliance and networks. So what this simply means is that it's businesses that group together to benefit, particularly in the global marketplace. Alliances are a form of collaborative agreement that bring about mutual benefits. These benefits include, in other words, all it's saying is that a whole group of businesses are getting together so that they have a competitive advantage and can reduce their costs, and then they have these benefits such as access to all shared technology, access to the equipment, access to distance markets, share costs on research, marketing and the spread of risk. As you can see, there's great benefits to be had. An example of a strategic alliance is Star Alliance. This is an airline business. Now, due to globalisation and the competitive market, they've found that what they've done is they've taken all of these businesses and grouped them together. Thai Airlines, Turkish Airlines, United Airlines, US Airways, Adria, Aegean, Air Canada, Air China, and the list goes on. The Star Alliance network is the leading global airline network with the highest number of member airlines, daily flights, destinations and countries flown to. It was established in 1997 as the first truly global airline alliance to offer customers convenient worldwide reach and a smoother travel experience. So can you imagine, all of these guys as one group called Star Alliance can do more than any one individual company could have done on its own. And the list goes on. So there's an external change in the market. The business responds by changing its structure. One of the structural changes is to come together as a strategic alliance so that you have these economic advantages. It helps the customer and it helps your business bottom line. Remember though, these changes may make workers very concerned for their job, and conflict may occur when trying to merge two or more workplace cultures. So the business has this brilliant idea, let's create this strategic alliance, but the workers have a different idea. They think, there's a change happening and I'm not comfortable with this. So any business that chooses to have a strategic alliance as their structural response to change could have some resistance on their hand. And I'll leave you to read what a network is. It's basically the same but less formal. It's businesses coming together but only to complete one particular task, not ongoing. Now it's really important. Okay, I'm going to stop there because that was pretty heavy going for you guys, and I also had some extra homework there for you. So I'm going to let you ponder what I've just said. And sorry, I'm just having a bright idea too. Okay. So just as a summary, we have looked at business responses to change. Okay, a business's responses to change, and we've said that there's actually three structural responses, and those structural responses were to outsource, to adopt a flatter management structure, and the third was to create a strategic alliance or a network. Okay? Alright, I'll leave you guys to do your work now.